Welcome back to the Connection Program. This is Lesson 6, Questions versus Statements. Perhaps you've been the interviewer in the past. I'm sure most of you experienced it. You ask a series of boring and uninteresting questions, and she gives you short, terse answers, and eventually you run out of questions and the conversation dies. Questions suck. They demand investment out of the receiver without contributing anything yourself. Questions are only good when you are asking them about something they already want to talk about, or they're already invested in. For this reason, questions are rarely effective when getting to know a stranger, especially when you've just met them and they have no reason to be invested with you. Making statements, on the other hand, are more powerful and more engaging than questions. It shows that you're paying attention to them, it forces you to be proactive in the conversation, and it accomplishes the same result as the question, but with a far more enjoyable dynamic for the other person. So one common exercise that I have my students do is turn questions into statements. So for instance, where are you from becomes, you don't look like you're from X. What do you do for work turns into, you look like someone who's very creative. How did you guys meet turns into, you two look like you've been friends for a long time. This is called cold reading, and essentially what you're doing is making a series of cold reads. Whether you're right or wrong is unimportant. At the worst, she'll simply answer the question you were going to ask anyway. But when you do get it right, she'll be very impressed, and it will spark more interesting and personal conversations. She'll also be very impressed by how observant you seem to be. So some examples from my life. There was a girl from Chicago that I met in Boston. And when I met her, I said, "Oh, you don't look like you're from around here." I was just saying it. I had no idea. She said, "Wow, I'm from Chicago. How did you know that?" And I said, "Oh, well, you just seem to have a much more Midwestern vibe or something like that." It's kind of bullshit. And then we were talking a little bit later, and she said she mentioned that she went to college out in Chicago before she moved to Boston. And instead of asking her, "What school did you go to?" I just took a guess. I said, "Oh, let me guess, you went to University of Chicago." And she nearly crapped herself. She was so amazed that I knew that. And it blew her mind. And she probably asked me 5 or 6 times that night, "How did you know that? How could you tell?" And I told her, I said, "Oh, well, you seem very smart, and you seem very educated, and I know it's a very good school." And these things are all true. She did seem very smart and educated, but the truth is I just took a stab in the dark, and and it was one of those times that it really paid off. I was on the other end of this dynamic when I was in Amsterdam a few years ago, and I met an Australian woman, and I was kind of down that night. I wasn't really in much of a mood to talk. And she started throwing cold reads at me, and really deep, penetrating cold reads, like about my relationship with my parents. And she cold read, she said, "I bet your parents are divorced, aren't they?" And I was like, "How the hell did you know that?" And she says, "Well, you just seem like a guy who probably has some commitment issues." And I'm like, "Oh my God, how the hell did you know that?" And it just went on, and she nailed like 4 or 5 of them in a row, and I was absolutely enwrapped in her and felt a very strong connection with her, and was just blown away by how perceptive and intelligent she seemed. And we had a really great night together, and we actually have seen each other a few times, and it's been really great. So it's coming from the other end, it feels very powerful to have these things happen to you. So here's your exercise. Write down 5 questions that you regularly ask and turn them into statements, or possible statements you can do. You can reuse my examples and other people's listed below. Go out and replace these questions with the statements 5 times in conversation. It can be with 5 different people, it can be 5 times with the same person, doesn't matter. Just go out and do it 5 times, and then write about the experience. How does it affect the conversation?